welcome back. It's Christina again with the Artist Pod, and today we'll be talking about how to draw a beaver. As always, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, and I'm drawing straight into Photoshop. So, let's get arting. Alright, so here is the beaver. They're just a couple colors, so it's going to be kind of a lighter brown, right where its cheeks up here are, and then a darker brown everywhere else. So we're going to get started with the lighter browns, staying within the confines of kind of the fur sketches. I don't know what to call it. The way the sketch is done. And we're going to do the whole thing in shadow first for all of it. So both this light brown and the darker brown we'll do in shadow, and then we'll add the highlights after. Right, so all of this in shadow. And that's just, when I'm talking about shadow, I'm talking about light pin pressure, less strokes. And then to brighten it up, you would add more. More pin pressure, more strokes, kind of everything about it. And by staying within this line, the lines that we're currently doing, it'll make it easier when we're adding the highlights to see how that delineation is, right? If I pop that off, you can clearly see where all of these are, and then I can add, highlights appropriately. So, just that line pin pressure, just staying within those areas, and so I'm going to get that done with both the light brown and the dark. So I'll change the color to the dark and get all of the whole thing done in shadow, and I will be right back. So we'll get the black of the nose in later. Now we're just going to add the highlights. So as I'm doing highlights in this style, I kind of already sketched out where the shadows are going to be, right? So we have the light source coming from above, kind of straight on. So we'll have some shadowing along the back here, under the mouth, a little bit by the ear, under the nose, around the eyes. But to fill it in, so make sure you're on the right layer, I'm just going to stay within what I've already shadowed, right? Just do a few. The middle is also going to go into shadow because that dips in, and underneath here is going to go into shadow. Didn't quite sketch that, but it would. Right, and then you can kind of fade off the pin pressure to let it swoop under. Right, so just, and it's coming over here, so we're going back into shadow, back into highlight, back into shadow, and into highlight, shadow underneath. So like I can get the top, and then I'll allow the bottom to go into shadow. Okay, so that is that color. And then for the darker one, same thing, just kind of continuing that on. Does make it a little easier to kind of do this rough sort of squiggly sketch that I do beforehand to indicate highlight and shadow. Right, because now I don't have to put as much thought sorting that out, other than, I mean, I do a little bit, but I can dedicate more time. I can dedicate more time to thinking about what I'm doing, or to other changes I want to make on the fly. Right, so this is all it is. I'm just staying within these lines I've already done. I'm adding more lines and more pin pressure. Not excessively, because I still want it to you know, you still want it to be seeable. So I'm going to get all of the highlight in, and I will be right back. Now, sometimes what I'll do, you know, all this down here, I think I marked it all the way. Yeah, this is shadow, but I might have like a few stray ones that are a little brighter. It just kind of adds more of a dynamic look. You just don't want to clump a whole bunch together or do that too much, because then it brightens the whole thing up, right? You don't want to do that. I still want the impression that this is in shadow under his chin, but giving it a little bit isn't necessarily a bad thing. And then I can give a little, some of these as they splay out, not much. Okay, so I'm gonna get the nose in real fast. Beavers, they kind of have like divots in the side of their nose where it kind of like loops in, and then not quite like dogs, but similar to dogs, because dogs have the whole like loop that circles in. Beavers just seem to have a big round hump on their nose with two indents for their nostrils. Best I can tell. Some beavers seem to have more hair by their noses. That might be something to like consider, you know, be a little easier to draw potentially. Right, so just underneath, I'm just this light, oh sorry my words. It's just the light pin pressure to get the nose in. And then we're gonna pop that off and see what we got. Yeah. And then we're gonna add some highlights to this. Right, again, you have that side of the light source, but it is rounding down into a recess and then coming back out on the other side. Right. I'm gonna do something with this too, so it's not just a thing hanging out in space. I'm gonna ground it a little bit more. That won't be coming. This won't be all the way down, this highlight, because the nose does round just underneath. Right, so bringing that over, but once again you have, it's going into the nostril underneath, but you would, you know, potentially catch a little light under here. There we go. Okay, so to give this a little bit more grounding, right, it's recessing into the head. Just don't want it like freeform hanging. Maybe I can do more like this. Changing direction can be an effective way to indicate contour change even without adding highlights and shadows to it. Oh, I don't know, that kind of looks worse. Kind of intentionally doing the same on this side, though I don't need to. To balance it a bit better than what I did. So now I'm going to take a bright, like, orangey color. Yeah, I think this will be good. And then in areas of like the most highlight, I'll be adding that in, right? So light source coming from above and to the right, making sure that this is the only thing on here. Just drawing it on top of, including the nose, right? It'll serve as like acting as a, like a brighter section. It'll look like this is where the light is most intense. It's kind of what I want it to do. So I won't fill in as much as we just did. In fact, I won't even need very many swipes per line. Won't go to the edges. Sort of balance out exactly where it's hitting. And this is definitely a little bit more freeform. It's kind of taking a look and then deciding how that would go. We'll bring it over by the eye, because eyes are things that are prominent for us, right? So under the eye, where light would be catching. Eyes are the first thing we notice, so doing something to help highlight the eye isn't necessarily a bad thing. And then a little bit on some of the spots that go over. But not in anywhere where I have drawn in a shadow. Right, because this is only on spots that is catching the light. Just want to do it a little bit on the chin. Just indicate this pushes out. That's why I gave a little burst of light under there as well, and then we can have a few of these. Again, nothing big, but just where it might be catching. And fading it out. I'm not doing it nearly as much as I was before. Okay, so that adds a nice burst, right? And maybe a little bit over here, just a smidge. Just because his other eye is like right there. Now we're going to take a blue, a bright blue, and we're going to add in shadows. So anywhere where I've shadowed it, I'm going to add just very light pin pressure, just like a smattering of blue on it. And this is a bright blue, but it'll still read as shadow to us, because blue is a shadow color, but to read it as shadow, I need to be really like backed off. So this is extremely light pin pressure. All of these shadow spots. It's a little bit more standard to do this than the oranges, because this I have a pretty standard, right? Like I am drawing in the shadow. The orange, I'm looking at the highlight and then kind of making a decision. So whether or not I think that's a spot that would get highlight. Okay, so now I'm going to add in some blue through the highlights in between the lines, like in these like darker sections. Not much. Again, this is still light pin pressure. Just in a few spots. And this is also that more free form. I'm kind of taking a look and deciding. Although that's a little much. Particularly going for any like big gap I've left, I'll put some blue in it. It can just help kind of tie everything together. And not all of them. So this is definitely, you know, I'm still picking and choosing and balancing it out. If I feel I need a little bit more blue somewhere else, or I put too much blue somewhere. Now sometimes what I'll do is add in just like a little bit of burst on some of the blue. Not all of it. Just sort of picking and choosing and spreading out areas where I'm going to brighten the blue up. Again, just like I did with the sporadic lighter color of the fur throughout the dark shadow. This serves to do the same thing. It adds just like a little bit of extra interest. But again, it can't be like all clumped together. So it's something I'm going to spread out. Because it'll be noticeable. that it's brighter. Yeah, okay. So then, last thing I'm really gonna do is draw on just like a little bit of highlight here. So you could put the full eye in. I think it would still work to draw it, but I also think it works like this. And there we go. There's a beaver. Alright, so that's how you draw a beaver. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.